It is the Blue Room. It is your instant match reaction for Brighton and Hove Albion to give them their full title. Neil, David Moyes' tricky toppies to give Everton their full title. Oh, what a win. What a win. I absolutely love that win so much. Joining me to talk about it in all its glory are Rob Vera, who's back in the States, and Dave Downey, who's looks like he's in a taxi in town. He's got a taxi to town ready to go, celebrating Pop World. Because, I mean, it was worth it. It was warranted. It warrants a night out, that kind of performance. But, I mean, Dave, I'll come to you first. There's just so much I loved about that, like I said. But we've got to start with Moyes, haven't we? And I think that the moment that I loved more than anything that we've not had for a while was when Moyes just embraced the players at the end, and it just got that great warm glow. And it felt like the blood was back in our veins again after a couple of years of being sort of frozen in one of these crypto pods that you see in science fiction films. But Everton felt like a warm-blooded animal again at full time there, and I certainly felt it when I saw Moyes' smile and his warm embrace.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I've spent a lot of time this week talking about how different he seems and conducts himself and the presses and whatnot, and I think he seems a lot more calm than he used to be, certainly since I was petrified when I had to go and see him every week. I have to be honest about that. But yeah, I mean, I think there's more an emotional tie to him about the club as well. I think when you hear him speak, plus like what you're referring to today when you won the game, him being as arsed as he didn't used to conduct himself like that. Right now, it's like proper Evertonian stuff. When he's celebrating with the players, when we're coming off the pitch and he's gritting he does the old grit in his teeth when you've scored. He's screaming at the players as well. He probably feels a hell of a lot more like himself as a manager as well. I know West Ham, he had the great days at West Ham there when they won a trophy, but I guess if you were to speak to him behind closed doors, he would say that he's back where everything started for him in football, and he's brought with him a load of experience now that he didn't have when he first came to us. Yes, he had an amazing experience with us for the decade and a bit that he spent with us, and then moved on and everything went to shit. Yeah, I felt like you mentioned there about it being, and I think it's an excellent way of describing it when you've got that sort of blue back in your veins. I've felt that certainly against Spurs, and more so now because it was an away game and we've had this dreadful away record. Looking at him, probably made me feel more passionate about the Blues than I have done for quite some time. I don't know whether that's basically just getting carried away because you've gone and done that, but it's the way in which we play is traditional Moyes, and traditional Moyes was really, really good. And I think many who had the concerns about him becoming the manager, which, let's face it, many of us have, and thought, you know what, I'm not too sure about Moyes coming back. You should never go back and all that sort of thing, referring back to Howard and all that sort of thing. I go as far as saying that he's started quickly to get what this team is, what he can get from this team. And these players have started playing for him now as well, which you look at. I mean, all the results went our way today as well. And yeah, it's an absolute thriller. Like I'm parked up in the middle of town. I'm about to go walk on the streets till tomorrow.
Rob, how do you feel after that? Did you get that glow as well? Was that the sort of like the emotional high point for you at the end?
Yeah. I and the thing is I don't know where it came from, but there is something to what you're saying, Matt. Like I don't know. It felt like us again in a way that it hasn't felt like us in a long time. And I'm sure, again, I'm sure some of that's nostalgia or whatever, but I found myself just shaking my own walls, just yelling at the screen in jubilation there at the end. And I think today was just, and maybe part of the reason, Matt, you enjoyed that so much is just because this was one of those times where we took advantage of the very limited opportunities we had to gain an advantage, if that makes sense. And then from there, we just played the match that was in front of us, right? And much to the chagrin of the Brighton fans, who apparently are really kicking off and are so offended by the opposition today. I think it was one of those just examples of how ugly is really beautiful when given the context of where we are, the things that happened in the match, especially with the injuries to Mangala and to Calvert-Lewin, down to 10 men with 5 minutes of normal time and another seemingly 10 minutes or so of extra time. I mean, today was just about gutting it out, and it was a real character win. And there definitely seems to be something to the idea that if you are someone who does not watch Everton every week, you could look at a game like this and say, well, what's really the difference between this and Sean Dyche? But I think for those of us who do watch it every week, there's something different about the way in which the players are going about playing in these types of situations. Even at times today, when you saw some of the players that performed so well against Spurs, like Ndiaye and Lindstrom and guys like that, who really just were having a hard time getting going like they did on Sunday. There still seemed to be a trust that the manager has imparted in them to still try to play football a little bit in those situations, but to also trust them that, hey, we will be able to get back defensively, we'll be able to still pursue the ball, we'll still be able to make the right decisions, and it got to a point where that balance that we've been so looking for so long seems to have activated something that is sort of greater than the sum of all these parts that are out there right now. I'll also say that if you kind of look at just the basic top line statistics from this game, I mean, Brighton had 16 shots and yet only one on target the entire match. They definitely got to a point where you felt like, and yes, I know we're all kind of dreading the other shoe dropping, but you felt like they were running out of ideas pretty quickly. They came out in the first half, being somewhat effective, and then it just kind of turned into nothing. And in the second half, they seemed to really amp up some pressure, and yet they never really created dangerous chances out of it. Everton dealt with all the myriad slew of corners that came in. Defensively, they just seemed fine the entire time. They seemed self-assured. And I think it's a real testament to David Moyes finding a way to give these players a more active role in being smart about how they should play the situations at hand instead of just only playing one particular way. These last two matches in particular feel absolutely like games that we would have lost under Sean Dyche. They feel like games that we win because of the trust that he's put in these players, and frankly, the fact that he's made a couple of key strategic changes in terms of the 11, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But he's getting more out of the squad. I think other guys are playing in better roles for themselves. Now we have to kind of wait and find out with a week to go or so to go in the window, especially in light of these two injuries today. What the cost for this victory is. But bottom line, we're 7 points clear of the drop. David Moyes has been on the job for about a week and a half, and we've already gone from being 1 point clear to 7. I think that's, some of that's the league around us, but I think a lot of that is a testament to what David Moyes has already been able to do in terms of lifting this squad.
Yeah, and I think just to labor on this point for a little bit longer, but I think he deserves so much credit for the way in which he's come in. And I think it is those little bits like around the outside, isn't it? Like the intangible things that people, like you say, Rob, who don't watch Everton and live and breathe this every day won't really get. It's the way in which he talks in press conferences. It's the way in which supporters react to press conferences, the way in which he talks about certain players. And to take over a squad that, we were all kind of a bit fearful of, that, maybe, I speak for myself here, but certainly other people who've spoken to, they have that dormant fear in the back of their minds that maybe Dyche is getting the best out of these players. Maybe there is a little bit. This could potentially get even worse without him. Then to come into that situation and effectively take over a squad that Dyche, let's not forget, had effectively given up on and told the owners that he couldn't take them as far as they could, and he take them as far as they could, and kind of discarded them and was ready to walk away. To galvanise that group of players to the point where you've taken 6 points from games against Villa, Tottenham, and Brighton is a huge achievement. I think it's a huge achievement. And I think as well, about wanting to go too over the top, because it is a small sample size, this, but I think in the 3 games, or certainly the last 2 games, you've seen where Moyes, and I've always said this, is just an objectively better manager, because I think that Dyche could have got a win like that today in the way in which he played. We nicked the goal, defended, but I don't think he could have done what happened at Spurs and set the team up to play that way and be on the front foot in that game. So I think as a package, the 2 games, maybe today was quite Dychean, if you want to call it that, in the way in which we dug in that second half, and sort of the muscle memories from some of those games against Arsenal and Chelsea and City that we've had down the years was still there. Maybe did help us a little bit at times, but it's the other stuff as well, like Tottenham at Goodison, where the pragmatic thing to do in that game was to get on the front foot and get after a shaky Tottenham side. That does not happen at all under the previous manager. So I think Moyes has already showed that he's just got that little bit of extra nuances as a coach. Sorry, Rob, did you want to jump in there?
The only thing I would say to that, and I think you're right. I mean, but I think where I feel a bit of a difference maybe is in those, like you said, those intangible things. We talked at length about how the constant running commentary from the manager, basically framing himself as a miracle worker for dragging these poor players to as little as he got, and that being the most, that had an effect on them. And to me, in a sport of small margins, especially as it pertains to player confidence, to me, those little bits of extra confidence, even if it's Ndiaye stepping up in that penalty spot, and I'm still full of dread, waiting for, watching an Everton player step up for a kick like that. But there's a bit of a boost of confidence and even a bit of swagger and arrogance that I think Moyes has kind of reminded some of these players that, you guys know how to play this game, you know how to play football, and there's a belief there. It doesn't mean that he can't be honest and assess that certain players need to step up, and maybe collectively that they do. But I think the primary difference is that the Dyche seem to always operate from a position of anything we get is despite the players, and Moyes seems to be of the kind of ilk of, it's the players who are going to be able to get us out of this. And so far, that little bit of kind of reframing of mindset, I can't prove it, but I think in a game like this even mattered to a large degree. Or even if you just want to go into who he's playing, having that extra center half in there, or having, playing a right back at times, bringing in a right back into certain situations, or bringing in Ashley Young for a role that is more, fitting for where he is and his versatility. I just think that Moyes is looking at the squad, and as we talked about, is he squeezing 10 to 15% more out of what he's got? I think he is, and that's why we find ourselves where we're at right now. Yeah,
Dave, let's talk about the most crucial and probably the funniest moments of the game, which is Ndiaye scoring that penalty. It's a really good penalty. It's right in the corner because he kind of rolls it in, doesn't he? For those of you listening, Rob Vera is doing the seagull celebration. But he rolls it into the corner. It's got to be pinpoint perfect because the keeper goes the right way, and it is. But I mean, the celebration after it, I think it's Darren, who we know quite well. I think he's put on Twitter a few times that Ndiaye is probably the coolest player we've had for a while, with his low slung socks and his goatee and his skill. But that just took it to another level today, didn't it? He's a piss boiler as well.
Yeah, I like that. I like that about him. I like that about most players. It took my mind back to the way Jamie Vardy is, because he'd want to piss take the absolute worst out of people when he was away at them. He did a similar one, if you remember, when he scored away at Crystal Palace. He did the same thing in sort of waving his arms and all that. And do you know what? I didn't think I had that down for what Ndiaye would do. But I suppose when you see a player do that sort of thing, you think, well, is that different to what we actually get out of him on the pitch? And quite obviously, he seems to do both. He's that talented of a lad. A masterstroke by Thelwell, I think it has to be said, going and getting him. Probably the only one he can sort of hang his coat on in terms of players we've got in. But yeah, I mean, I just think with Moyes, just going back to the point Rob made there about him, there's a simplicity about what Moyes goes about here, which I think is a rarity in the modern game. Looking at your squad and thinking who does the best. You put out the squad that can do the best of what they can do. And Ndiaye probably typifies that when you look at what we went and did. It's hilarious. It reminded me as well of the season before last when McNeil scores the 5th. And he sort of salutes the away. He salutes the Brighton fans, and they're absolutely. Yeah. I love it when you can pick out individuals who are absolutely fuming and like saying all sorts of shit to them. I absolutely love it. And you know, it got to a point where I think that it felt so. It's so Moyes-esque performance that there was such fine margins we used to have. You used to remember that. Remember that year we ran, I think, 6 on the spin, 1-0 wins. And that felt like that to me today. The way in which the players performed and was so much behind of what they saw. There was a philosophy to that, which I thought was, you know, it wasn't even apparent when you had Dice and what was even possible when you had the previous managers we have in recent years. And when he said does that celebration, I'm absolutely buzzing. That's the kind of thing you put as your screensaver. It's the kind of thing that you're watching on your phone, sending it to mates all the time, just absolutely taking the piss and making their fans so angry about it. And
I think our Blue Room WhatsApp group's already got it as the picture, hasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a picture someone's like memed into a chicken or something like that, or a bird, and he is a seagull just running around flapping his arms, which you know, I think as well. I mean, it's not to make too fine a point of it, but where's the fun we've had as Blues? Do you know what I mean? Where's those times we had thinking, do you know what? I love that. I'm going to laugh my head off. I'm going to celebrate we scored the goals and take away all of the shit we've had to speak about for quite some time now. So it was massively refreshing. The penalty, I absolutely shit myself, I have to say, when that keeper goes the right way. He doesn't exactly blast it in either, but like you said, it's pinpoint into that corner. And when we scored that, I felt we were relatively comfortable. I know we're going to go on and talk about it a little bit, but Matoma, who I've been a big fan of, I think he's sort of blown away a little bit in recent months and seasons. I still think he was in probably their biggest danger, getting the ball out that side. But you think of O'Brien, you know, think of the way Moyes has set this up here. This is why we need to continue the narrative of giving him credit for you. I don't think you'd ever see Nathan Patterson on the pitch, albeit it's been via subs, as much as you did with Moyes than you did under Dyche. O'Brien just looked like somebody who'd won a competition for Dyche, and he clearly didn't have anything to do with signing that lad. He's come on, and the games he's played so far, he's looked like, if at the very least, a talented player, and also somebody who's performed really well along with the defenders in and around him. And to have that as your blueprint going forward, you go to places like this, it is those fine margins that you sort of start to put faith in Moyes in a much more precise way. Then you think, oh, do you know what? If Everton scrap a win here, if Everton scrap a point, I'd take away. And we do the previews of the show, of the games, don't we? And I said that, you know what? I'd love a point. I would absolutely take a point away at Brighton. The way we've played today, when's the last time you've looked forward to watching Everton play? And I can't wait for that Leicester game.
Yeah, I mean, Rob, when Ndiaye got booked for that celebration, I was thinking, which Premier League nicknamed teams can't you mimic in a celebration and not get booked for? So like the Red Devils, surely now, no one doing any horns at all. Richarlison screwed, isn't he, with Pigeon one? He's going to get booked every week now for doing that. But yeah. I mean, it was bizarre that he got booked for it, wasn't it? I suppose he was good a little bit, but not overly excessive. But I think Dave's right. Isn't it? It's good to have fun with this as well, because this is ultimately leisure time, isn't it? Something we should enjoy.
Yeah, it's this is supposed to be fun, and this is a league, last time I checked, that loves marketing videos of crazy goals and celebrations and backflips, and I don't know how many times I've seen Tim Cahill punching the flag, or Adam Jones had a good tweet today. He said, gosh, he's like, if that's a booking, then imagine what Yerry Mina would have gotten for that goal against Watford a few years ago when he danced. I mean, that was ridiculous. I think he also pointed out how Jamie Vardy celebrates at times too. I think that was absurd. But look, I think Dave hit on something that's important. These last two games, I mean, hey, yeah, on the one hand, winning is fun, breaking news, right? But I would also say these two wins and this week or so of Everton has been just fun again in some way. And what's interesting is that these two games were very different games, very played differently. You had, different players who stepped up in these games. We haven't even talked about how great Idrissa Gueye was today. Just an absolutely just top class performance in terms of kind of holding everything together. But the bottom line is that when Ndiaye scored, just like the goal celebration he had last week when the entire crowd at Goodison just was as loud as I can remember it, everyone was energized again. And there was that, I hate to use that word again, but again, that kind of synergy between the fans and the players. I think Ndiaye is trying to gin up, not only the rest of his teammates, but also, our fans as well. And I'll say one final thing about this. I think I had commented, Matt, to you about how one of the things that I've lamented over the last few years is feeling like we had kind of a squad full of meh personalities, just kind of all very like even keel, stone faced, very, very English, team in some way. I think you need guys like Ndiaye, who's one of the things that I loved about, Mina in the day, or I loved about Fellaini in the day, is that getting a player who can kind of rile up the other side isn't just fun for us to watch. It also ends up taking the opposition out of their game. From that point forward, they seemed frustrated and focused on everything else but themselves. They were focused on the Everton players wasting time. They were focused on refereeing decisions. They were focused on everything but really the task at hand. And the game sort of played out that way. And I think that you saw that with how the Brighton fans reacted as well. Guys like Ndiaye, not only scoring, but finding a way to get the crowd distracted, to get the other team distracted, to get them off of their game. Those are things that create those tiny advantages in these games of, as we said before, fine margins. And so from that standpoint, it was fun, but I also think in a lot of ways it was really, really smart.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And you mentioned the player, Rob, there that I did sort of want to finish off by talking about, and that is Idrissa Gueye. And I think in a funny sort of way, he does kind of encapsulate the last two performances pretty perfectly, because he had 2 assists against Tottenham in what was a more enterprising front foot performance from Everton, and today was just an absolute colossus in midfield, as you mentioned there. I've got some of the numbers here from Paul Brown. He made 8 tackles, 2 interceptions, 1 clearance, 10 out of 14 ground duels won, and he made the key pass as well. But I just thought he was remarkable today, Rob. And, for Everton to be without Mangala for those last, I think it was 10 minutes of normal time and 8 minutes of injury time, and for himself, have to go to the well again, have to cover more ground in that situation. He's been a remarkable signing for us twice, hasn't he, really? And to still be playing at the age he is that well. And I think to sort of modify and improve his game, obviously maybe not quite as dynamic off the board. He's a bit more about positioning and anticipation these days, but really intelligent, really good footballer who was one of our best midfielders of the Premier League era, you could probably say, over across 2 spells.
Well, certainly from a value standpoint as well, considering what it cost to acquire him initially, and then even getting him back. I had mixed feelings about him coming back. Obviously, there were some controversies surrounding certain things with him, and at a very sensitive time. But he has been, he's definitely been very good. I would say that I have felt like I've noticed him even more over the last few games, and his presence, particularly on a day like today. I think after the post-match or during the post-match again after Spurs, I think I talked about how every player seemed to have a pretty great game. Whereas today, there were definitely some players who were left us wanting, especially guys like Decore. Lindstrom didn't really quite get it going today, and so on and so forth. And I remember at one point it looked like Gueye had hurt himself, and I was very concerned about that. But man, from that point forward, when he came back on, it just seemed to be, we talk all the time about players wanting the ball, wanting the responsibility in those moments. I think that Gueye, in some ways, I think Ghana in some ways is at times under certain managers reduced to just the guy who stands in front of the back four and kind of does his thing there, which is certainly a valuable role. But I think he's been I think another dimension has even been added to him of late in terms of taking more responsibility on the ball, getting it forward, making smart passes. I think he was excellent today, and it is a little scary at times for me to think about us relying so much when we are such a thin squad on a 36-year-old midfielder. But I can't really say that I noticed some massive difference between Ghana now versus him a few years ago. But again, I think that between getting more out of the players who are already starting and obviously making the big changes, we didn't really talk too much about Jake O'Brien today. I thought he was excellent again. I think that has just been, it was absurd that he never got minutes before this. I also think the way in which he has found roles for Patterson even off the bench, or finding ways to integrate Young in a manner that I think is better suited to his versatility. I mean, I think David Moyes is pushing all the right buttons, and that's about getting more out of the players who are already starting and playing roles and adding dimensions to them to a degree, but also obviously getting more out of the overall squad. The key now, of course, I think is going to be what we hear about injuries moving forward. It's going to, I don't know how many times we say this every year, but this is going to be a big close to the transfer window. Everton certainly now, by all appearances, just has to do something. But having said that, you certainly feel better about going to the end of the month with that 7-point cushion, with the game in hand, versus where we had been before Moyes came in.
Yeah, just like finally on Ghana Gueye, like often we say, but we have said in this podcast, me and you, Dave, Danny, is the reason why players end up at Everton. And I think for him to have that move to PSG and sort of go to the top of the mountain and play alongside Messi and Mbappe every day to coming back to Everton, I think it would have been very easy for him to sort of slack off in terms of his professionalism and his attitude and kind of not show that fire burning as much. But there's been absolutely none of that from him. So, huge credit to him. And just on that, Dave, and also Rob mentioned Jake O'Brien there, and I didn't want to talk about him just purely for that tackle on Matoma at the end, which is right on the edge of the box. He's driving in. Like, I imagine before the game started today, like when O'Brien was thinking about it, that would have been the nightmare scenario, when they're isolated against their best dribbler, their best player, going back into the box, and he times it absolutely perfectly and ultimately shuts him down. And I think for him to even make that tackle in that situation probably shows the confidence that's been instilled in him over the past few weeks.
Oh, absolutely. And I think somebody like him's come into the setup in quite an angry way. I think he tweeted, didn't he, saying that he tweeted, I can't remember what he said specifically, but it was that like it's time to get in the team and stuff. He's, well, sort of what our opinion is, he's been really, really patient to be given a go in this. All the most frustrating when you see that we're not picking up results. We've got a horrendous run of games, and I know the one thing that Dice would end his career on, I guess, will be how good defensively that he got some sides working. Which I suppose would be a relevant excuse to say that's why he didn't really get a game. But when you go and pay that much money, which we didn't have for a centre back who's not played in the Premier League, relatively young, you can see why he'd be incredibly frustrated. I'd be astonished if he wasn't looking for a move before the last fortnight. And he's taken like a duck to water, hasn't he, under Moyes, who's trusted him as well. I think that's a big part of what Moyes does. I think psychologically he has a big impact on a lot of players, which he had for us in the past. You think of the ones that have succeeded. You think of the ones that haven't really had much experience in the Premier League. And to go back to, like, say, a Lescott, Leighton Baines, indeed, when he come from Wigan, those levels in which they've stepped up to prove what they are. Lescott went on and won a league with City. Baines, we really need to say more about him becoming probably our best left back in history. And you've got somebody to come in there and feel unwanted initially when he's came in, but now you look at him and think he's a real solid part of this team. Now, it's one of those concerns that you wish you had in terms of being able to pick your side, where you're probably going to have one on the bench in certain amounts of games that you've got coming up. When he's making that a headache for his manager, that's a tremendous headache to have for Moyes. And I like the way he conducts himself on the pitch. I think he's got more pace than you probably think when you look at him that he actually has, similar to Branthwaite. And I don't really like, I know I've contradicted myself immediately here, but I don't like the direct comparisons from, oh, you've had Branthwaite go and play abroad, come back, and he was fantastic, similar to where we've got O'Brien from. But having to come in at a different part of a central defensive unit and can play in a completely different role twice that we've seen it, you know, he deserves a massive amount of credit there. And somebody you look at who builds their game, I think you see him doing things that he wouldn't necessarily do. He's pushed the boat out a little bit. I mean, obviously not seen the lads when he played at Lyon or anywhere else he's played, but like you said there, that scenario going through his head must be so hit and miss, thinking, you know what, if I cock this up here, give away a penalty, then that might be before I get back in this team again. And in his mind, the other side of it's thinking, well, this is the opportunity I've had to establish myself as a first team player in the Premier League, and he absolutely nails it to a T. He couldn't have wished to make a better tackle than that probably in his career. I think most defenders would probably agree with that. It was immense what he did. And you know, he's only going to grow on confidence from that. I think it's a key word we've explained here on the post-match, is that level of confidence we've got in such a quick period of time under Moyes. And going back to what I said initially about, I think that's a lot about what Moyes does now, which I would not have put at the top of his forte in years gone by, shall we say. There's a little bit more of a psychological issue with Moyes, let's say, with the way certainly media-wise, but player-wise, we're with him. We've heard various people say various things when he left the club about Moyes. But now, I think it compares with what we've seen out from him since he's been back outwardly to the media, to fans. And I think that's got that same rub-off with the players that we've got there, not least a giant young 20-odd-year-old lad who's looking to pry his trade as high as he possibly can. He's been immense and he deserves his place as well, which is another good point I think that we need to establish is you've got different players for positions now, which all, you know, it looked like it was years, decades away from when Everton had, you know, competition for places, or it was going to have competition for places. You look at that back four now and you're looking at a defence there that can change its shape. We debated last week whether it was a back three with wing backs, whether it was a flat back four occasionally. The versatility there is huge, and I think Moyes will relish that as well, given what he wants from this team. And yeah, I know we're going to finish shortly, so just to go on full circle, like you said, that's up there in one of the wins we've had in recent years, I would say. I feel absolutely outstanding about that. I don't drink often at all. Matt's already sitting there with his glass of wine. I want to go home and actually do that myself, watching Match of the Day, watching all the games, watching the Seagulls absolutely gutted and fuming with us, and I'll sit on Twitter all night talking to them. I just think that was peak Moyes and peak Everton under David Moyes. I don't care if I get carried away, but that's what it felt to me today.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the toys going off the pram from the Brighton continues at the end was just kind of the cherry on the cake, wasn't it? But we will wrap it up there. We're going to be hearing from, well, we're all going to be doing podcasts in the next 48 hours or so. Rob, you're back with a kickabout with Les tomorrow night, so that'll be, you know, I'll start your week off. Dave, are you back with Roger on Monday for Blue Monday?
Roger and Les if he's about as well, but yeah, probably be just me and Roger. There
we go. And we'll hear all about the press box brawl people are calling from Paddy on Tuesday morning. That'll be out. So
yeah, someone goes to Paddy in the hospital. I heard he's got he's got hit a few times. Maybe
when Moyes was talking about two bad injuries, he wasn't talking about our players. He was talking about a couple of our journalists. And
no, it was both of Paddy's hands.
Yeah. So we'll hear all about that on Tuesday to see how involved was Boyland in the press box brawl.
Brawlin Boyland, yes.
Brawlin Boyland, that's it.
Brighton Boyland.
But what a win! What a manager. We all absolutely love David Moyes. Great to see him back and doing the business for the Blues. Do look out for all of those pods in the coming days. If you watch us on YouTube and you enjoyed Rob's celebration, Seagull celebration, do hit like, subscribe, and comment if you listen to us as well. If you listen to us, just imagine it. Just imagine it and leave us a nice comment and leave us a 5-star review because Everton have won and you should be in a good mood. But
that's right.
Yeah, do hit subscribe. Let's make this a long-term thing here on the Blue Room. If you're listening for the first time, it's great to have you involved after an Everton win. But yeah, up the toppies. We'll be back soon. Speak to them.